The town of Harrisonville had always prided itself on its quiet streets and friendly neighbors, but in the spring of 2003, that sense of security had been shattered. On March 14th, 17-year-old Lauren Whitaker vanished without a trace. She had been a bright student, known for her involvement in the school choir and her volunteering at the local library. Her family reported her missing after she failed to return home from a walk in the nearby woods, where she often went to sketch nature scenes. The initial search was swift, with local police combing the area, organizing volunteers, and checking every possible lead. Despite their efforts, no evidence was found, and the case quickly grew cold, leaving the Whitaker family in a state of despair. Lauren's disappearance affected more than just her immediate family. The community rallied around them, holding candlelight vigils and organizing search parties. Flyers were distributed across town, schools held assemblies to raise awareness, and local newspapers covered the case extensively. Still, weeks turned into months with no new leads. Lauren's parents, Margaret and David Whitaker, felt the crushing weight of uncertainty, waking each day with the hope that their daughter would return and the dread that the hope might be in vain. Friends and neighbors tried to offer comfort, but as the months stretched into years, even their support began to waver under the strain of prolonged grief. Detective Emily Rhodes, newly assigned to the Harrisonville Police Department in 2010, began reviewing cold cases in her early career. Lauren Whitaker's file caught her attention immediately. The case was detailed, with statements from friends, family, and witnesses, but it lacked the concrete evidence needed to pursue a strong lead. Rhodes noticed inconsistencies in witness accounts, subtle details in Lauren's last known whereabouts, and the faint traces of potential connections that previous investigators might have overlooked. She requested access to all the physical evidence collected during the original investigation, including clothing, personal items, and samples from the woods near Lauren's last known location. Rhodes believed that modern forensic methods, unavailable at the time of Lauren's disappearance, could finally uncover the truth. By 2012, advances in DNA testing had transformed cold case investigations. Detective Rhodes partnered with the state crime lab to re-examine evidence that had long been considered inconclusive. Fibers and hair samples, once thought irrelevant, were carefully analyzed, revealing genetic material that had never been matched before. It was a breakthrough that reignited hope and the Whitaker family, though wary after years of disappointment, clung to the possibility that answers were finally within reach. Rhodes kept them informed with cautious optimism, emphasizing that the process might take months, but assuring them that every detail mattered. The investigation revealed a suspect who had been a peripheral figure in Lauren's life, but whose background raised red flags. Jonathan Mills, a local handyman, had performed odd jobs for the Whitaker family and others in the neighborhood. At first, Mills' interactions seemed innocuous, but forensic evidence connected him to Lauren's disappearance in ways that could not be ignored. DNA traces found on Lauren's belongings, combined with inconsistencies in his statements over the years, prompted Rhodes to secure a warrant for further investigation. Mills, who had remained under the radar since 2003, now became the focal point of renewed scrutiny. Community reaction to the news was intense. Harrisonville residents, long accustomed to their town's sense of safety, struggled to reconcile the idea that someone they had known casually or trusted could be involved in such a crime. Local media covered the story extensively, emphasizing the shock and betrayal felt by neighbors and friends. For Margaret and David Whitaker, The revelation was a complicated mix of anger, disbelief, and cautious hope. Finally, there was a path toward understanding what had happened to their daughter, and a chance to hold someone accountable after a decade of silence. When authorities arrested Jonathan Mills in early 2013, the Whitaker family prepared for the next chapter of the legal process. Mills' demeanor during the arrest was calm, almost unnervingly so, and he provided minimal explanation for his actions. Detectives anticipated that the initial interrogation would be critical, as Mills' statements could reveal his involvement and provide closure for Lauren's family. Rhodes and her team meticulously prepared, reviewing every piece of evidence, every statement, and every potential line of questioning to ensure they were ready for the legal battle ahead. The pressure was immense. The eyes of the community and the family were all upon them. The case went to trial in late 2013. The courtroom was filled with tension, as neighbors, friends, and family gathered to witness a decade-long mystery unfold. Testimonies from forensic experts, combined with careful cross-examination of Mills, laid out a timeline that painted a chilling picture. DNA evidence linked him directly to Lauren's disappearance, and witness accounts corroborated aspects of his presence near the woods on the day she vanished. Every piece of the puzzle that had been missing for so long was finally coming together, giving the Whitaker family a sense of justice that had seemed impossible for years. During the trial, Lauren's friends shared their memories of her, highlighting her kindness, creativity, and the positive impact she had on the community. Their testimonies humanized the evidence, reminding the court that behind every statistic and piece of forensic data was a young life lost too soon. Margaret and David Whitaker listened intently, finding solace in the fact that Lauren's legacy was being honored and remembered publicly. The community, once paralyzed by uncertainty, began to feel a sense of healing, as if the process of truth-telling itself could help mend the invisible scars left by her disappearance. The trial revealed a shocking twist. Investigators discovered that Mills had not acted alone in facilitating circumstances that endangered Lauren. While he was directly responsible for her disappearance, evidence suggested that he had manipulated others without their full awareness, creating a web of deception that had allowed him to evade justice for years. This revelation stunned the community, amplifying the sense of betrayal and disbelief among those who had thought they knew the people around them. The Whitaker family, while reeling from the complexity of the situation, were determined to see justice through. Understanding that truth, no matter how painful, was essential to healing. After weeks of testimony, the jury reached a verdict. Jonathan Mills was found guilty of kidnapping and related charges, bringing a sense of closure to a case that had lingered for a decade. The Whitaker family experienced a flood of emotions, relief, grief, and a profound sense of justice finally served. For the town of Harrisonville, the trial and verdict marked a turning point, emphasizing the importance of persistence in investigations and the capability of modern forensic science to uncover truths long hidden. Community members expressed gratitude to the investigators, acknowledging the dedication that had brought resolution to a case many had feared would remain unsolved forever. In the weeks following the verdict, the Whitaker family focused on rebuilding their lives. They sought therapy, engaged with support groups, and worked to create spaces for dialogue about missing persons and the long-term impact of unresolved cases. Margaret Whitaker began volunteering with local organizations dedicated to supporting families of missing children, using her experience to guide and comfort others. David concentrated on mentoring at-risk youth in the area, emphasizing the importance of community vigilance and the value of trust. Together, they channeled their grief into actions that honored Lauren's memory and contributed to the safety and well-being of their community. Detective Rhodes, reflecting on the investigation, understood the long-term impact of the case on both law enforcement and the community. The successful resolution of Lauren Whitaker's disappearance highlighted the importance of reviewing cold cases with fresh eyes, utilizing evolving technology and maintaining hope even when leads seemed non-existent. She continued to advocate for resources and training to support cold case units, emphasizing that each unresolved case represented not just a statistical failure, but a human story waiting for justice. As the first anniversary of the verdict approached, the Whitaker family held a private memorial for Lauren. Friends and neighbors joined them, sharing memories, reading passages from her journals, and lighting candles in her honor. It was a bittersweet occasion, filled with tears and laughter, reflecting the multifaceted nature of grief and remembrance. For Margaret and David, the event solidified their understanding that while nothing could bring Lauren back, the pursuit of truth and justice had ensured that her story would be remembered accurately and meaningfully. Months after the trial, the community of Harrisonville still buzzed with conversations about Lauren Whitaker's case. While justice had been served, the emotional aftermath continued to ripple through families and neighbors. Many residents admitted to a lingering unease, realizing that someone they had once trusted had hidden such dark intentions. For Margaret and David Whitaker, the sense of relief from the verdict was tempered by the ongoing process of healing. They attended counseling sessions together, finding guidance in processing the intense emotions that had accumulated over the 10 years since Lauren's disappearance. The counseling emphasized not only grief, but also the lingering anxiety and distrust that trauma can embed in everyday life. Lauren's friends also faced their own journey of recovery. High school peers who had once walked the halls with her now tried to reconcile their memories of laughter and shared moments with the stark reality of her abduction. Many spoke about the guilt they felt for not noticing subtle signs, despite knowing deep down that none of them could have predicted what happened. Support groups, organized in part by local educators and counselors, offered a space to process these emotions collectively. They discussed the importance of maintaining connections with each other, emphasizing that while the pain would never completely disappear, shared understanding could ease the burden. The Whitaker family became more involved in advocacy work. Margaret began speaking at local schools and community centers, educating teenagers about safety, awareness, and the importance of reporting suspicious behavior. She focused on empowering young people with knowledge rather than fear, sharing Lauren's story in a way that honored her spirit and encouraged proactive action. David worked alongside law enforcement, providing insight into the emotional toll cold cases take on families, helping detectives understand the human side of their work. Together, they created a small foundation in Lauren's name, offering resources for families navigating the trauma of missing children and unresolved cases. Meanwhile, Detective Emily Rhodes continued to review other unsolved cases in Harrisonville and nearby towns. Inspired by the success of the Whitaker investigation, she approached cold cases with renewed dedication. Her strategy emphasized revisiting evidence with new technology, interviewing witnesses multiple times to capture forgotten details, and establishing stronger community relationships to encourage information sharing. Rhodes often reflected on the delicate balance between persistence and sensitivity, understanding that families of victims were carrying immense emotional weight while investigators pursued leads. Her work became a model within the state police, demonstrating the value of combining scientific rigor with empathy and human understanding. In the months following Mills' conviction, unexpected information began to surface. Individuals who had previously been hesitant to speak came forward with observations they had once dismissed or feared would be ignored. These testimonies helped reconstruct the events leading up to Lauren's disappearance, revealing patterns of manipulation and control that Mills had used to isolate her. While the revelation was painful for the community to hear, it confirmed the thoroughness of the investigation and underscored the importance of persistence in uncovering truth. Rhodes and her team meticulously documented every statement, ensuring that each piece of information could contribute to potential future investigations or legal proceedings. The media continued to cover the aftermath of the case, focusing on the broader implications for missing persons and cold cases in small towns. Local news outlets produced feature segments about Lauren's life, the investigation, and the steps families could take to protect their loved ones. Community forums and radio programs hosted discussions about public safety, missing children, and the long-term psychological impact of unresolved cases. These discussions prompted local law enforcement to expand outreach programs, offering workshops and informational sessions to educate residents about prevention and vigilance. The Whitaker family participated in these events, their voices lending credibility and urgency to the ongoing conversation. One of the most significant discoveries in the post-trial period was the psychological profile of Mills. Experts studied his behavior patterns and manipulative tactics, sharing insights with law enforcement to prevent similar incidents in the future. Mills had displayed subtle warning signs, including obsessive tendencies, deception, and a history of exploiting trust within his community. Profilers emphasized that while not every individual with concerning behaviors posed a danger, recognizing patterns could be crucial in protecting vulnerable individuals. Harrisonville law enforcement incorporated these findings into training sessions, ensuring that officers and detectives were better prepared to identify potential threats. The Whitaker family also worked to preserve Lauren's legacy beyond awareness campaigns. They organized art exhibits showcasing her sketches, letters, and writings, emphasizing her creativity and spirit. Friends contributed their own artwork inspired by Lauren, creating a collective tribute that celebrated her life rather than focusing solely on her tragic end. The exhibits were held at the local library and community center, spaces Lauren had loved, allowing residents to remember her in positive, inspiring ways. These events became a cornerstone of community healing, providing a sense of closure and a tangible reminder of Lauren's enduring presence in Harrisonville. While the family and community focused on healing, Mills' legal journey continued. He filed appeals challenging aspects of the trial, but the overwhelming evidence against him made success unlikely. Each hearing brought renewed attention to the case, forcing the Whitakers to confront painful memories repeatedly. Despite this, Margaret and David maintained their resilience, understanding that justice extended beyond a single verdict. Their focus remained on supporting each other, the wider community, and initiatives that could prevent future tragedies. Each legal proceeding, while emotionally taxing, reinforced their commitment to truth and accountability. Harrisonville schools adopted enhanced safety protocols as a direct result of the case. Students were educated about personal boundaries, stranger danger, and reporting procedures. School counselors received additional training in recognizing early warning signs of potential abuse or harassment. Parents were encouraged to engage in open conversations with their children about safety and awareness, fostering a culture of vigilance balanced with trust. The Whitakers contributed to these efforts, sharing their experience and the lessons learned from Lauren's disappearance. Their involvement created a stronger, more informed community, better equipped to protect its members. Years later, the town reflected on the lasting impact of Lauren Whitaker's case. Annual memorials celebrated her life, blending grief with remembrance and emphasizing the importance of community solidarity. Residents spoke about the lessons learned, including the value of patience, the critical role of modern forensic science, and the necessity of supporting families enduring similar tragedies. Detective Rhodes, now a senior investigator, often cited the Whitaker case as a benchmark for effective cold case management. Her methods influenced policies across the state, highlighting the potential for resolution even in cases that seemed hopeless. For the Whitaker family, life gradually stabilized, though the absence of Lauren remained a profound presence. They found comfort in each other, in the community, and in the knowledge that the truth had been revealed. Their advocacy work continued to grow, touching other families affected by loss and inspiring broader initiatives to improve safety and support for vulnerable populations. Margaret's speeches reached audiences beyond Harrisonville, spreading awareness and offering guidance to parents, educators, and local officials across the region. David's mentorship programs developed into ongoing efforts, emphasizing the importance of guidance, oversight, and community responsibility, reflecting on the years since Lauren's disappearance. The Whitaker family understood that closure was a complex process. It was not simply the verdict or the completion of legal proceedings, but the ongoing journey of remembering, honoring, and learning from Lauren's life. Each step they took, whether speaking publicly, creating memorials, or assisting other families, was part of a larger effort to ensure that her story continued to influence and protect others. Harrisonville, once defined by its small-town tranquility, had become a community marked by resilience, awareness, and shared responsibility. Forever shaped by the events of 2003, the final chapter of Lauren Whitaker's story unfolded quietly but powerfully in the months following Mill's conviction. While the courtroom drama had concluded, the work of rebuilding lives and restoring a sense of normalcy was ongoing. Margaret and David Whitaker focused on nurturing their family, ensuring that their younger children understood both the gravity of what had happened and the importance of moving forward. They wanted them to know that while evil existed in the world, justice and resilience could prevail. Family meals, shared stories, and small celebrations became the bedrock of this reconstruction, grounding them in routines that reminded them life could continue even after tragedy. The community of Harrisonville responded to the resolution of the case with a mixture of relief and cautious optimism. Many residents admitted they had been wary of outsiders and even familiar neighbors for years. But Mill's arrest and conviction helped restore trust incrementally. Local organizations initiated neighborhood watch programs, not out of fear but as a proactive measure to ensure safety and engagement. Parents volunteered for after-school programs. Teachers integrated discussions of personal safety into curricula. And local police offered workshops for teenagers on recognizing manipulation and abusive behavior. The Whitakers remained at the center of these initiatives, their presence reinforcing the lessons learned from Lauren's disappearance. Detective Emily Rhodes, whose dedication had been instrumental in cracking the case, continued her work in Harrisonville and the surrounding counties. She mentored younger investigators, emphasizing the importance of persistence, patience, and empathy in cold case investigations. Her methods, particularly the use of careful re-interviewing of witnesses and family members, became a model for other units. She often reflected on the Whitaker case as a reminder that even decades-old cases could yield results when investigators combined forensic science with a sensitive understanding of human psychology. Rhodes also stressed the value of establishing trust with families, noting that building rapport often unlocked details that otherwise remained hidden. Meanwhile, the impact of the case reached beyond Harrisonville. Statewide news coverage highlighted the persistence of cold case units and their potential to deliver justice. Even after many years, other families of missing or murdered individuals contacted the Whitakers, seeking advice and support. Margaret and David, drawing from their personal experience, offered guidance on navigating law enforcement, media attention, and the emotional toll of long-term uncertainty. Their story became a beacon of hope for those who had lived with unanswered questions for decades, demonstrating that truth and accountability could eventually prevail. For Lauren's friends, the conclusion of the case brought a bittersweet sense of closure. High school classmates, now adults, reflected on the young woman they had lost and the years of uncertainty that followed. Reunions became moments to honor Lauren's memory, sharing anecdotes and stories that highlighted her humor, kindness, and creativity. Art projects, community events, and scholarship programs were established in her name, focusing on supporting young women in education and the arts. These initiatives created tangible reminders of Lauren's life and legacy, shifting the focus from tragedy to celebration of her potential and achievements. The Whitaker family also took steps to secure Lauren's digital and physical legacy. Her journals, artwork, and letters were compiled into a collection that could be shared with the community. Local libraries and schools hosted exhibits displaying her work, allowing residents to remember her as she had been vibrant, talented, and full of life. Margaret emphasized that these exhibits were not merely memorials but educational tools, providing insight into the importance of paying attention to young people's emotional well-being and the warning signs of manipulative relationships. In the months and years after the trial, Mill's behavior in prison continued to reveal the depth of his manipulative and controlling nature. Despite the life sentence without parole, he attempted to correspond with Margaret and other family members, sending letters filled with blame, distortion, and threats. Correctional staff monitored these attempts, ensuring the Whitakers were shielded from further harassment. These efforts highlighted the long-lasting effects of individuals like Mills, showing that even after removal from society, the psychological damage inflicted on victims and families could persist. It reinforced the Whitakers' commitment to supporting one another and maintaining vigilance over their emotional and physical safety. The legal conclusion of the case also allowed Harrisonville law enforcement to reallocate resources to other cold cases. Detectives were encouraged by the Whitaker case to pursue other long-standing investigations with renewed vigor. They revisited evidence, re-interviewed witnesses, and applied modern forensic techniques, realizing that patience and persistence could yield breakthroughs even decades after crimes were committed. The successful resolution of the Whitaker case served as a template, emphasizing that no case should be considered beyond hope or outside the reach of justice. For the Whitaker family, personal milestones began to regain their significance. Holidays, birthdays, and graduations, once overshadowed by grief and fear, gradually reclaimed their joy. Margaret and David worked to create new family traditions that included remembering Lauren in positive ways, whether through storytelling, dedicating achievements to her memory, or supporting young people in the community in her honor. They emphasized resilience, teaching their children that while tragedy shapes life, it does not define it entirely. Community trust, slowly eroded over the years of Lauren's absence, was also strengthened by proactive engagement and education. Neighborhood associations, parents, and local leaders collaborated with law enforcement to create safer, more connected environments. Youth programs focused on mentorship, personal safety, and awareness of manipulative behavior. Workshops for parents provided guidance on fostering open communication with children about difficult topics. These measures, inspired in part by Lauren's story, helped Harrisonville evolve into a community more attentive to both prevention and support. For families facing potential threats, the Whitakers also engaged in public advocacy to improve systems for missing persons and cold cases. They collaborated with state and local policymakers to promote funding for cold case units, technological enhancements in forensic analysis, and the establishment of support networks for affected families. Their involvement lent credibility to legislative efforts, emphasizing that real-life experience could guide policy in ways that purely statistical or administrative perspectives could not. By channeling their grief into constructive action, they transformed personal tragedy into a broader societal benefit, affecting change far beyond Harrisonville. As the years passed, reflections on the case highlighted several key lessons: the importance of vigilance in everyday life, the critical role of empathy in law enforcement, and the necessity of persistence in investigative work were repeatedly cited. Harrisonville became a case study in both criminal justice programs and public safety workshops, illustrating how long-neglected cases could be resolved through methodical effort, community engagement, and modern investigative techniques. Lauren's story, though tragic, became emblematic of hope, illustrating that even after decades of uncertainty, truth could emerge. For the Whitaker family, closure was a gradual process rather than a single event. While Mill's incarceration ensured he could no longer harm others, the emotional scars remained. Counseling, support groups, and continued advocacy work helped the family integrate the experience into their lives. They learned to balance remembrance with forward momentum, honoring Lauren while embracing the possibility of joy and fulfillment in the years ahead. This delicate balance allowed them to rebuild their lives while keeping Lauren's memory alive in meaningful ways. The town of Harrisonville also evolved in response to the case. Residents became more aware of subtle warning signs in personal interactions, more engaged in neighborhood networks, and more proactive in supporting vulnerable individuals. Schools, local businesses, and civic organizations collaborated with law enforcement to foster environments that prioritized safety without breeding fear. These changes, influenced directly by the Whitaker case, created a community better equipped to prevent similar tragedies in the future. Ultimately, the resolution of Lauren Whitaker's case demonstrated the enduring power of human persistence, empathy, and dedication. The Whitaker family, law enforcement, and community members collectively ensured that decades of uncertainty did not erase the truth. While the loss could never be undone, justice provided a framework for understanding and closure. Lauren's life, and the story of its tragic end, became a lasting reminder that truth, no matter how long buried, could ultimately be revealed, bringing a measure of peace to those left behind.